Hey, what's up? It's Dynasty back with some more MK1, MK Uno content for you all on this Thursday afternoon because I actually just stumbled upon this article from ScreenRant.com. A couple days ago, they posted this. It's an interview with Ed Boon discussing a lot of the Chaos Reigns DLC. And in the midst of this interview, it's pretty interesting because they ask Ed Boon straight up about the return, potentially, of Kreate-A-Fighter and MK1 or future Mortal Kombat games. They ask him about fighters Draman and Hataru, and if we'd ever see the likes of them return as playable characters in MK1. Talks about Animalities, the process, a pretty jam-packed interview going over everything of note from it. It's not the full thing. I'll have the full thing linked down below. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. So, if you're enjoying Chaos Reigns or you're still hyped for potentially seeing Kreate-A-Fighter returns sometime down the line in the future, maybe if we're lucky, seems like it's never going to happen, do me a solid. It takes you a second. Drop a like on the video. I always say it because it's true. Without you guys, these MK videos do not happen. The recent love and support has been amazing, so thank you guys for supporting your boy through and through with the MK1 vids. And with that said, I guess it's time to start discussing the Screen Rant article and interview with MK co-creator Ed Boon. Now, I'll have the full thing linked below if you want to check it out yourself and not listen to me narrate this article. But they open with this right here, without spoiling too much because there are people who might be waiting for Chaos Reigns to come out, and I don't want to talk directly about the end of Mortal Kombat 1, but in the last section of the game, there's a lot of randomized character mashups. Was there ever any thought about creating an Armageddon-style Kreate-A-Fighter? Because it feels like it's there on the back end. And honestly, it's kind of funny because going back to the build-up of the launch of MK1, you guys remember there was a lot of rumors and speculation that maybe, just maybe, the final act of the game was supposed to be a Kreate-A-Fighter moment where you select a fighter that you create potentially, and then you beat the game. That was like the rumor the last week of the game. We mentioned it a few times. Now, obviously, since then, we know that that's not the case. You simply just pick a character on the main roster. But at the time, a lot of people were under the assumption that there was potentially a day one patch which would allow access to, you know, creating a fighter. Sadly, it never happened. And sadly, it seems like Boon doesn't want to see that happen. Now, I say that because he replies to this statement with this right here. You know, until you said it, I didn't even think of having that be something to give the players to do. It was always something that we put together. The challenge with Mortal Kombat Armageddon at the end of the day was that with a Mortal Kombat character, there are certain things that are expected of it, right? They have to have special moves, and now they have to have intros and a super move, and the big one is fatalities. And I think perhaps the biggest criticism we got with Mortal Kombat Armageddon was that every character didn't have the classic two big showcase fatalities. We made this thing where you can string together fatality moves and come up with your own fatality, and at the end of the day, the main reason was because we couldn't do two fatalities times, I don't know how many characters we had, you know, 50 or something like that, so 100 fatalities, let's say. It was just physically impossible unless we took another 2 years to make the game. So, in order to do a true Mortal Kombat character for Mortal Kombat 1, with the kind of kit bash features that we have, it would be really challenging to make true fatalities for those Kreate-A-Fighter characters. So, there you go. That is apparently the reason why Kreate-A-Fighter will never come back because, well, how do you create fatalities? I can see the argument that he's making here. My counterpoint would be, well, why not just do the Soul Calibur 6 method, and when you create a character, just have them fight based off of a character on the main roster. So there you go, problem solved. If you create a character and you just set their move list to be Sub-Zero, well then they'll have Sub-Zero's Animality, Brutalities, Fatality, entirety of the move list. Really easy. That is one way to do it. That's how Soul Calibur more recently has kind of handled Kreate-A-Fighter. I mean, look at Tekken. You can customize characters completely. kind of like Kreate-A-Fighter. There's ways to do this. Again, I understand what he's saying. I completely get it, but I just feel like it's kind of a cop-out answer because there's no reason why you can't just clone the move list from somebody that's already in the game and still give players that ability to more or less still create their own character. That's all I'm saying. Hell, you could even have a creative finisher as the gimmick for the game. You know what I mean? But actually iron it out this time with like legit animations. Who's to say there's not just like 20 or so generic fatalities that you could choose from? You know what I mean? I don't know. So there you go. That is Ed Boon's recent statement in regards to seeing Kreate-A-Fighter ever make a comeback. Now, going on in regards to Kreate-A-Fighter, Screen Rant said, I do remember the Kreate-A-Fighter conversations that were happening back when Armageddon was released. I always kind of enjoyed how you could chain them up to get more and more hits as you went on. Boon's response to that was, I thought that we had something going there. But had we added that, as well as 2 fatalities, 2 real fatalities, I think it would have been embraced a little more. I think a lot of players interpreted it as this feature replacing fatalities. Ironically, every time that we didn't deliver 2 fatalities per player, like, you know, Deadly Alliance was another one, we only had 1 fatality per character, it is like, do not mess with that. You can go to 3, but don't do any less than 2. That's just expected. And again, I agree wholeheartedly with that 100%. So why not have, like I mentioned, 20 generic finishers, and when you create the character, you simply select 2 of those. I'm just saying. I don't know about that taking an extra 2 years to animate 20 fatalities. I don't work there at NetherRealm Studios. That's what Boon thinks. That's what Boon thinks. Maybe it would take too long to do that. Who knows? Screen Rant goes on to say, speaking of going to 3, Animalities are coming back as a free update, not just for Chaos Reigns, but for everybody. Can you speak a little bit about why you wanted Animalities to come back? And also, is the process going to be the same? As in, am I still going to have to perform a mercy first? And Boon comes out and clarifies that he's the one responsible for actually lowering the requirements from way back in the day to get these Animalities triggered. He goes on to say, no. That was one of the, I wouldn't call it a debate, but a difference of opinion that we had. The design team wanted to have all that criteria to do an Animality, and I guess I made the call to say, no. They're just going to be like fatalities. You do the move, you get it off, because there's a lot of circumstances that have to happen to set up the mercy and all that stuff. So it's just going to be, you have to win the fight, and it's a 3rd fatality, kind of like you described it. And honestly, I agree with Boon 100%. I do think that back in the day, the requirements were kind of OP, but given that it was kind of a secret, I can understand, given the time frame and time period back in the 90s, but nowadays, with people barely being able to actually pull off these fatalities despite us having easy fatalities, and I think the easiest input of all time, you might as well just make it easy for everybody. So I agree with Boon's decision for the Animalities this time around. Next up, Screen Rant says this right here, and so what was the idea to bring Animalities back? Because from what we've seen of the Animalities so far, it looks like it's not going to be all the same Animalities that were in Mortal Kombat 3 and UMK3 Trilogy. And there were definitely some where, was it Scorpion that turned into a penguin and laid in an exploding egg? I kind of missed that one, to be completely honest. In response to that, Boon says, that was the next sentence I was going to say. Was they're not going to all be the same. For example, Scorpion will not turn into a penguin and do an exploding egg. There are certainly references to some of the older ones that we made, and some characters do turn into the same ones that they did. It's much more of a spectacle, and just a little bit of a background with production. We had this much, holds 2 fingers up, indicating a very small amount of memory, left to do all the Animalities back in Mortal Kombat 3. And so we had to go down to 4-bit images, so everything was very low resolution, not many colors at all. It was all very rudimentary. This time, we're going all out. It's a big production for each one. And honestly, guys, if you've not seen me reacting to all of them, you probably should check it out because I think these are pretty sick. Final paragraph here, Boon says, and to your other question, back in Mortal Kombat 9, we brought back Brutalities. Mortal Kombat 11, we brought back friendships. So we're just kind of digging into the past. And so, Brutalities, friendships, what else is there? Animalities. So we decided to go all out with those and kind of show these are the Animalities we would have made if we had unlimited resources back in 1995 or whenever it was when Mortal Kombat 3 was released. Now this next question's pretty interesting because Screen Rant essentially is asking Boon if we'll see other 3D era characters featured in the Chaos Reigns expansion, which I played on stream a few days ago. The video stream is actually on the channel. They want to know, Boon, will we be seeing more Deadly Alliance and Deception era characters, in particular like Hataru and Drummond? And Boon's response breaks my heart. He says, I don't think you're going to see Drummond and Hataru. We've had conversations about including them as cameos, possibly, but I wouldn't guess in this coming year you would see them. So, not off the table forever, but it seems like Drummond and Hataru probably won't end up being in the game, which again hurts my heart because I love these 3D era characters. In particular, Drummond is the one cameo fighter I've been demanding and begging for since pre-MK1 launch. Boon kind of teased the idea that Drummond would be somehow, some way part of MK1. It kind of seemed like he was hinting at him being one of those weird and wacky cameo fighters. Then the game came out, Combat Pack 1 was revealed, KP2 was revealed, no Drummond, so maybe KP3. At this point, doubt it's gonna happen, so I really do think Boon hates Drummond and Hataru. We'll see. Now next up, Boon discusses the whole process of getting a lot of these guest characters into Mortal Kombat 1. He's talked about it a few times recently in these PR marketing interviews he's done for Chaos Reigns, but this one's answered kind of differently. It says here, talking about all the different franchises that have been in Mortal Kombat over the years, not just MK1, but going back, obviously, there was MK versus DC, but it was really Mortal Kombat 9 in 2011 that really kicked it off with Freddy Krueger and Kratos. Since then, we've had Leatherface all the way to now, when we were just talking about Homelander. Are there any other characters still on the bucket list that you love to be able to play with, but you haven't been able to find a way to get access to yet? In response to this, Boon said this, all the time. We've had a bunch of discussions, and most of the time, the obstacle is the IP holder. Whatever the circumstances are to whether they can license it out, whether they want to license it out, you know, all the obstacles that you have, the hoops, you've got to jump through in order to make those things happen. Usually, those are the things that hold us back. Plus, the fact that we have way more ideas than we have slots to fill, so to speak. But we're always having conversations about, you know, Street Fighter or some other game, like we were dipping into with Kratos and whatnot. But it's just like fun talk. Like if you and I sat down and said, what would be cool to put into a Mortal Kombat game? It's the same conversation. I'm never losing my hope for that Mortal Kombat Street Fighter crossover. Now, this next one is also a pretty interesting question because they asked Boon straight up, what are you most proud of with the Chaos Reigns DLC launch? And to that, Boon says, it's a good question. I think that the Chaos Reigns DLC launch is like the third or fourth time that we've done something like this, where we launch a game and then a year later we kind of relaunch it, add more characters, add more features, environments, just really layer onto it. And to me, it's a little bit more of a sign that players are continuing on with this ride with us, you know? We could have multiple releases of a game just layering on features and whatnot. And then also throughout the year, we're releasing the characters and cameos and new features. But to me, I guess I'm most proud of the fact that it's still prominent in the video game industry. And it's this franchise that's going to stay around long after I'm gone. I think they're going to continue making movies. I think they're going to continue making games and whatnot. And I think Chaos Reigns just kind of represents that. As far as the features are concerned, to me, it's great that there's still an appetite for this in Mortal Kombat 1. New cameo fighters, new roster fighters, you know? The pop culture references are always fun too. Just seeing things that we're big fans of. The Scream movies. Terminator 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. Aliens is also, you know? We got Aliens back in Mortal Kombat X. And so it's great to be part of that thing that we admire so much. And then we're part of the same conversation. Part of that kind of thing. So there you go. Boon said it himself. He's proud to know the franchise will be around long after he's gone. Now, closing things off here, ScreenRat says, when you talk about how they'll still make Mortal Kombat games after I'm done, do you have any other ideas for a non-Mortal Kombat project that NetherRealm could work on in the future? Now, I thought this was an interesting response. Boon says, oh, yeah, I've plenty of ideas. We also did a DC game called Injustice, and we made a sequel to that. And there have been other games that, you know, we just haven't been able to find the time. One of the things about when a game continues to do well, there's an expectation of another one coming. And for us, it'd be a tough thing to sell to players. Okay, we're gonna do this game, and then an Injustice game or something, so you're not gonna see Mortal Kombat for 10 years, right? Like, I don't think that's going to be an acceptable scenario for our mega fans. So, seems like it'll never change. As much as they'd like to do other things because the expectations there, seems like Mortal Kombat and Injustice are probably going to continue to be the staple of games that NetherRealm Studios continues to work on. I wish we could see a side game, a Shaolin Monks 2. I think that Mortal Kombat fans would probably be open to the idea of another Mortal Kombat game that wasn't just your standard fighting game. Feel like it's been long enough. I don't know the numbers for Shaolin Monks, but I'm sure back in the day in 2005, 6, 7, whenever that dropped, the numbers weren't that bad. I'm sure they weren't. I feel like it's been a long time coming with them already trying to expand the Mortal Kombat IP, us having, again, live action movies, having animated movies dropping, Mortal Kombat 1. There's been so much new Mortal Kombat stuff they're trying to push out there, especially because WB's trying to, like, squeeze as much money as they can from the IP. It just feels like a wasted opportunity. Even if it wasn't NetherRealm, why not just outsource this and have another studio work on this, then have Boon consultate on and off? I'm just saying. I feel like they're just getting too comfortable. I don't know. If you really want to make some money, WB, just do more of the license. Stop pressuring them to pump out these fighting games every 2 to 3 years. But guys, that is all I got for y'all today. It seems like Kreate-A-Fighter is probably never going to happen because according to Boon, how do you do the fatalities for a Kreate-A-Fighter? I gave my thoughts on how you fix that problem. We'll see if it ever happens. At this rate, I would be shocked if it ever comes back, especially just because if you add a Kreate-A-Fighter mode, what incentive do players have in buying DLC characters if they can just create them, more or less? That might cut into the marketing and the DLC sales. So I feel like that's why we don't have a Kreate-A-Fighter mode, just because if you have that, then you can just make these DLC characters and WB would be losing out. So I think that's the true reason behind it. I don't think Boon can come out and say that, but I mean, I feel like it's pretty obvious at this point, because I feel like the excuses we get here are pretty whack. But again, just my opinion. But guys, what do y'all think of this article that ScreenRat had, this interview with Ed Boon? Again, I'll have it linked down below. Do you want to see Kreate-A-Fighter come back? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, it takes you a second. Drop a like on it. Subscribe for some more MK content like this on the channel. Until next time, been your host, Been Dynasty. You guys, please take care, stay safe. I love you, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Slipping on the crack, but I'm not superstitious. Count all these racks, I'll be steady, counting my digits. Slipping on the crack, I am